You don't get what you want. You get what you are. You're not confused about reality. You are remembering it wrong. You feel it sometimes, that quiet tension in your chest, like something obvious has been missed for a very long time. And if you leave this video early, you will miss the moment where that tension finally makes sense. Not because you didn't listen, but because you assumed you already understood. Now listen carefully. Most people think reality works because of effort, because of reward, because of cause and effect moving forward in time. And that assumption is exactly where things begin to collapse. You may still be doing something wrong, not morally wrong, not intellectually wrong, but directionally wrong. You are pushing where alignment was required. You are fixing where coherence was missing. And none of that will be explained yet. Because the problem isn't that you don't know enough. It's that what you think you know is quietly rearranging how you see everything. This is where most people get it wrong. For over 100 years, humans have argued about the nature of quantum reality, particles or waves, chance or structure, observer or system. But what if the entire debate was framed incorrectly from the beginning? What if reality was never trying to be explained, only reflected? Now slow down. This is not a physics lesson, and this is not a spiritual promise. This is about the way experience organizes itself around you. You were taught that reality responds to what you do. But there is another possibility that almost no one considers. Reality may be responding to what you are coherent with. That idea alone makes people uncomfortable, because it removes the illusion of control without removing responsibility. And responsibility without control feels dangerous. Now listen carefully. When something goes wrong in your life, the instinct is to fix the external situation. Change the job, change the relationship, change the strategy. But notice how often the pattern survives the change. Different place, same feeling, different people, same friction, different goals, same exhaustion. This is where most people get it wrong. They assume suffering is punishment, or failure, or a lesson they didn't learn. But what if suffering is simply misalignment? Not something done to you, but something happening through you. And no, that does not mean you are to blame. It means something much quieter. It means reality is acting like a mirror, not a judge. And mirrors don't argue, they reflect. But reflection only makes sense if consciousness comes first. And that is where the real discomfort begins. You were trained to believe consciousness emerges from matter, from brains, from systems. But there is another model, one that physics keeps circling without naming directly. A model where consciousness is the primary field, and matter is a pattern within it. If that were true, then reality would not be something happening to consciousness. Reality would be something consciousness is doing, not deliberately, not consciously, but coherently. This is where language fails, so listen carefully. Coherence is not belief. It is not affirmation. It is not effort. Coherence is alignment between what you expect, what you assume, and what you allow. Most people try to change reality by changing belief, but belief is noisy. Coherence is quiet. And quiet things shape reality more efficiently than loud ones. This is why trying harder often makes things worse. You push against the mirror, and the mirror pushes back. Now listen carefully. Physics discovered something unsettling a long time ago. The observer cannot be removed from the system. Not philosophically, practically. The act of observation changes the outcome. At first, this seemed like a technical problem. Measurement limits, instrumentation. But after a century, the discomfort remains. What if observation is not passive? What if observation is participation? And what if participation does not require intention? This is where most people get it wrong. They think participation means choice, decision, control. But participation may simply mean presence, the way you are tuned, the way you are oriented, like a radio. You don't force a signal to appear. You align with a frequency. And when the alignment is correct, the signal was always there. Now stop for a moment. If reality works like a frequency field, then effort is irrelevant. Only tuning matters. And tuning is not something you do aggressively. You release interference. This is uncomfortable because it removes the drama. It removes the heroic struggle narrative. And humans are deeply attached to struggle, because struggle makes suffering feel meaningful. But meaning does not require pain. It requires coherence. Now listen carefully. There are versions of you that did not make the choices you made, not metaphorically, functionally parallel versions, not as science fiction, as logical consequences. If consciousness is primary, then identity is flexible. You are not a single point moving through time. You are a spectrum of possible selves filtered by coherence. This does not mean you jump timelines at will. That language is misleading. It means your experience selects a consistent version of reality that matches your internal state. And most of this selection happens automatically. This is where most people get it wrong. They think change requires force. But force creates resistance. Selection requires resonance. Now listen carefully. Forgetting is not a flaw. Forgetting is intentional. If you remembered the full structure of reality, experience would collapse. You would have no contrast, no discovery, no movement. Forgetting allows immersion, and immersion allows meaning. This is why awakening is not loud. It does not arrive with fireworks, it arrives with recognition, a quiet sense of, oh, this explains a lot. And when that happens, nothing externally changes at first, but everything reorganizes. There is a silent global awakening happening right now, not as a movement, not as a belief system, as a subtle disinterest in old explanations. People are not rejecting science. They are rejecting incomplete models. They are not rejecting logic. They are rejecting frameworks that ignore consciousness. And this is making many institutions uncomfortable, because systems built on control do not function well when coherence replaces compliance. Now listen carefully. This is not about escaping reality. It is about understanding how reality already works. And if you misunderstand this, everything else collapses. Reality is not rewarding you. It is responding to you. Not emotionally, structurally. Like an echo. You don't yell at an echo to make it nicer. You change the sound you produce, but most people keep shouting. Now, before we go any further, understand this. The most important insight in this entire video comes later. If you leave now, you will try to apply fragments of this and get confused. That confusion is why people dismiss these ideas. Not because they are wrong, but because they are incomplete when heard partially. Stay, because the next section will feel familiar, and then suddenly unfamiliar. Now listen carefully. When you say, I want change, what you often mean is, I want a different reflection. But reflections don't change first. The source does. And the source is not your thoughts. It is your state. State is deeper than emotion, deeper than belief. State is orientation. Are you oriented toward trust or defense, expansion or contraction, allowance or control? Reality reflects orientation, and it does so neutrally. This is why good people suffer. This is why effort fails. This is why deserving has nothing to do with outcome. This is where most people get it wrong. They think reality is moral. It isn't. It is coherent, and coherence has no opinion. If consciousness is the primary field, then matter is secondary, which means causality is not linear. The future is not created by the past. The present is selected from possibilities, and selection is influenced by coherence. Not desire, not fear, not hope, coherence. Now listen carefully. This is not something you practice, it is something you stop interfering with. And interference comes from misunderstanding, which is why explanation is dangerous too early. That is why nothing has been fully explained yet. Because explanation before readiness creates distortion, and distortion creates disappointment. So instead, notice how this feels. Not what you think about it, but how your body responds. That subtle stillness, that slight discomfort, that sense that something is being rearranged quietly, that is alignment beginning. Not as effort, as release. And we are only just starting. Now listen carefully. What you are feeling right now is not understanding. It is orientation shifting. Most people confuse those two. Understanding happens in the mind. Orientation happens deeper, and reality does not respond to what you understand. It responds to how you are oriented. This is where most people get it wrong. They try to think their way into a new life. But thought is a surface activity. Orientation is structural. You can think positive thoughts while remaining oriented toward fear. You can say the right words while expecting disappointment. And reality responds to expectation, not language. Expectation is quieter than belief. That is why it is more powerful. Notice how often your expectations contradict your desires. You say you want change, but you expect repetition. You say you want freedom, but you expect struggle. You say you want clarity, but you expect confusion. Reality is not confused by this contradiction. It simply reflects the dominant signal, and the dominant signal is rarely conscious. This is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. Not blame, excuses. Now listen carefully. In physics, there is a long-standing discomfort with randomness, the idea that events happen without cause. But what if events are not random, just uncorrelated to the causes we are measuring? What if the cause is not local? What if it is not in space or time? What if the cause is coherence across states? This is where the conversation quietly changes. Because once you remove locality, the old rules collapse. Distance loses meaning, time loses authority, and causality becomes contextual. Now slow down. This does not mean anything can happen. That is a misunderstanding. It means only what is coherent can happen. Coherence is constraint, not limitation, structure. Like harmony in music, not every sound fits. Only certain combinations create resonance. Reality works the same way. Now listen carefully. When physicists talk about wave functions, they often treat them like math, abstract tools, probability distributions. But the deeper discomfort has always been this. What exactly is waving? A particle, a field, information, or perspective? If consciousness is primary, then the wave is not in space. Space is in the wave. And that single reversal changes everything. If space exists within consciousness, then movement is secondary, position is relational, and identity is fluid. This is why the observer cannot be removed. The observer is not watching reality. The observer is where reality organizes itself. This is where most people get it wrong. They imagine the observer as a person, a body, a brain. But observation is not personal. It is structural. The body is an interface, not the source. Now listen carefully. This does not make you special. It makes you specific. You are a localized perspective within a larger field, and localization requires filtering. That filter is forgetting. Forgetting is what allows continuity. Without forgetting, every possibility would collapse into noise. You would not experience a life. You would experience everything, and that would be nothing. So forgetting is not a mistake. It is the cost of experience. This is why trying to remember everything is not awakening. It is destabilization. Awakening is not about adding information. It is about releasing resistance to coherence. That is why it feels grounding, not explosive. Now listen carefully. Here is the first moment where many people leave. And if they do, they misunderstand everything that follows. The most important insight is still coming later. If you stop here, you will turn this into another belief system. And belief systems always fail eventually. Stay, because what comes next will feel counterintuitive. Now let's continue. Suffering is often treated as a problem to eliminate, but elimination is not always alignment. Sometimes suffering is friction between states, like trying to drive with the brakes on. The engine works harder, the car moves slower. Heat builds up. The solution is not more fuel, it is releasing the brake. Suffering is the heat, not the enemy. This does not glorify pain, it contextualizes it. Pain is information, not punishment. Now listen carefully. If you are suffering, something is misaligned, not morally, not karmically, structurally. Your internal orientation does not match the reality you are selecting, and selection happens continuously, moment by moment. You are not stuck in one reality. You are maintaining coherence with one, and maintenance is often unconscious. This is where most people get it wrong. They think they are trapped, but coherence feels like gravity. It feels fixed until it shifts. Have you ever noticed how your life changes when you stop fighting it? Not when you give up. When you stop resisting, opportunities appear, timing improves, people respond differently, not magically, structurally. The field reorganizes around reduced interference. Now listen carefully. This does not mean passivity, it means precision. Action taken from coherence is efficient. Action taken from misalignment is exhausting. This is why effort alone is unreliable. Effort amplifies whatever state you are in. If you are aligned, effort helps. If you are misaligned, effort accelerates collapse. This is why many people work harder and get nowhere. They are amplifying incoherence, Now listen carefully. Parallel versions of you are not theoretical. They are necessary. If consciousness is primary and possibilities exist simultaneously, then experience must be selective. You are always experiencing one consistent thread. But consistency does not mean exclusivity. Other threads exist, and subtle shifts move you between them. Not suddenly, not dramatically, gradually, through changes in expectation, self-definition, and allowance. This is where language becomes dangerous. People hear this and think control. They think jumping, they think escape. That misunderstanding creates disappointment because this is not about control. It is about resonance. Now listen carefully. You cannot resonate with a reality you do not allow yourself to be. Identity matters, not labels. Orientation. Who you believe you are determines what feels possible, not logically, energetically. And energy here does not mean force, it means pattern. If you want to know why something has not changed, ask this quietly. Who would I have to stop being for this to change? And notice the resistance. That resistance is not fear of loss. It is fear of disorientation. Because changing identity feels like dying, but it is not death, it is reconfiguration. Now listen carefully. This is where most people retreat, because coherence threatens the familiar, even if the familiar hurts. Pain you understand feels safer than freedom you don't. There is a reason awakening is subtle. A loud awakening would destabilize society. A silent one spreads, not through belief, through resonance. People begin asking better questions, not louder ones. They stop accepting answers that ignore consciousness. They sense that something fundamental has been missing, and that sensing spreads quietly. Now listen carefully. This is not a revolution, it is a recalibration. And recalibration does not announce itself. It simply makes old systems feel inefficient, clunky, out of sync. If you feel that, you are not alone. But this is not about belonging to a group. It is about recognizing a frequency. And frequency does not need agreement, it needs alignment. Now listen carefully. Before we move further, understand this. Another critical insight is coming later. If you misunderstand what has been said so far, everything else collapses. Do not turn this into rules. Do not turn this into technique. That urge is interference. Stay with the orientation, because the structure is still forming, and we are not even halfway yet. Now listen carefully. At this point, many people start trying to organize what they're hearing. They want a framework, a system, something solid to hold on to. That impulse is natural, and it's also the main source of distortion, because reality is not asking to be organized by you. It is asking to be met. This is where most people get it wrong. They turn insight into structure too quickly, and structure freezes what was meant to stay fluid. Now slow down. Nothing here is meant to be used yet, not applied, not practiced, not explained to someone else. This is about perception recalibrating itself, and recalibration cannot be rushed. Now listen carefully. There is a reason quantum physics feels unfinished, not because the math is wrong, but because the assumptions underneath it are incomplete. Physics keeps trying to describe reality without acknowledging the field in which description happens. Consciousness. As long as consciousness is treated as a side effect, confusion remains, because you cannot explain the container using only what's inside it. If consciousness is primary, then measurement is not passive. Measurement is a relationship, and relationships change both sides. This is why the observer effect refuses to disappear, no matter how precise the instruments become. Now listen carefully. Think about how your own life works. The same event can feel completely different depending on your state. The words don't change, the facts don't change, you do, and meaning reorganizes itself instantly. Reality behaves the same way. Events are neutral. Interpretation gives them weight. But interpretation itself arises from orientation, not logic. Orientation is why two people can experience the same world and live in completely different realities. Not psychologically. Functionally, their outcomes diverge, their timing differs, their opportunities don't overlap. Not because one deserves more, but because they are tuned differently. This is uncomfortable because it challenges fairness narratives. Reality is not fair. It is consistent. Now listen carefully. Consistency is not justice. It is coherence over time, and coherence does not negotiate. This is why trying to fix the world without understanding coherence creates backlash. You cannot force alignment. You can only invite it. Now listen carefully. There is a subtle misunderstanding that appears right here. People hear reality reflects you and assume narcissism. They think this means the world revolves around them. That is not what this means. The reflection is not personal, it is structural. You are not the center, you are a node, a localized perspective within a larger pattern. And the pattern does not obey preference, it obeys coherence. This removes entitlement and replaces it with responsibility. Not moral responsibility, structural responsibility. How you are oriented matters, not because you're being judged, but because orientation determines selection. Now listen carefully. Selection is happening constantly. You are not choosing events one by one. You are maintaining compatibility with a version of reality, like walking through a hallway of doors, where only certain doors remain open based on how you're carrying yourself. You don't pick the doors. Your state does. This is why sudden change feels shocking. Your state shifts faster than your identity can keep up, and the world rearranges before you have a story for it. This is often called luck. It isn't. It's coherence realigning. Now listen carefully. At this point, some people feel hope, others feel anxiety. Both reactions come from the same misunderstanding. They still think this is about outcomes. It isn't. It's about relationship with reality itself. Here is the second moment, where many people misinterpret everything and leave. If you stop now, you will turn what you've heard into a strategy. You will try to optimize it, and when that fails, you'll dismiss the whole thing. The most important clarification is still coming later. Stay, because what comes next dismantles the last illusion, quietly holding everything together. Now listen carefully. Time is not moving the way you think it is. This is not philosophy. It is functional. The present is not produced by the past. The present is selected from a range of possibilities. The past is memory. The future is probability. Only the present is real. But present does not mean a point in time. It means a state of coherence. When your state changes, the meaning of your past changes too. Not the events, the interpretation. And interpretation shapes expectation, which shapes selection, which shapes experience. This loop is why personal change often rewrites your life story. You didn't lie to yourself before. You were oriented differently. Now listen carefully. This also explains why forcing forgiveness doesn't work. Forgiveness is not an action. It's a byproduct of coherence. When orientation shifts, resentment dissolves naturally. Because resentment cannot survive in a coherent state. This is why techniques fail. They try to manufacture effects without changing orientation. Orientation is upstream. Everything else is downstream. Now listen carefully. Parallel versions of the self are not separate people. They are variations of orientation, small differences in assumption, expectation, allowance. Over time, those small differences produce radically different lives, not instantly, cumulatively. This is why change feels slow until it isn't. Have you noticed how when something finally shifts, it feels obvious in hindsight, like it was always heading there? That's coherence, snapping into a more stable pattern. Now listen carefully. This is also why awakening cannot be forced. Force creates noise. Noise disrupts coherence. The quieter the orientation, the clearer the reflection. Silence is not absence. It is low interference. And low interference allows the field to reorganize efficiently. This is why stillness is powerful, not because it's spiritual, because it's precise. Now listen carefully. The global awakening people talk about is not dramatic. There are no mass realizations, no universal agreement. It is subtle dissatisfaction, a sense that old explanations feel thin, that productivity without meaning feels hollow, that success without coherence feels empty. People don't know what's wrong. They just know something is missing, and that knowing spreads quietly. This threatens systems built on distraction because coherence cannot be sold easily. It does not depend on consumption. It depends on orientation. Now listen carefully. This is why many feel tired in ways rest doesn't fix. The exhaustion is not physical, it's friction, living in orientations that no longer match the emerging pattern. If you feel that, Do not pathologize it. It is not weakness. It is sensitivity to misalignment. Now listen carefully. The solution is not to escape the world. It is to meet it coherently. And coherence does not require isolation. It requires honesty with yourself, not brutal honesty, quiet honesty. What no longer resonates, what feels forced, what feels heavy for no clear reason. Those are signals, not problems. If you ignore them, friction increases. If you listen, reality adjusts gradually. Now listen carefully. Nothing here asks you to believe. Belief is irrelevant. Coherence does not need belief. It needs permission. And permission is given when resistance drops. We are approaching the point where explanation becomes possible, but not yet, because explanation without readiness becomes distortion. So stay with the feeling of incompleteness. It is intentional. It is doing work you cannot see. And the next section will begin to connect the final pieces, quietly. Now listen carefully. By now, something subtle should be happening. Not excitement, not certainty. A quiet recognition, like realizing you've been standing slightly sideways your whole life, and suddenly, you're not. This is not clarity yet. This is alignment approaching clarity. And alignment always comes before understanding. This is where most people expect answers. But answers are downstream. What changes reality is orientation. Everything you've heard so far has been incomplete on purpose, because partial truth activates curiosity. Complete explanations too early activate defense, and defense blocks coherence. Now listen carefully. There is one final misunderstanding that must dissolve. People assume that if consciousness is primary, then the world is subjective, unstable, imaginary. That is not true. Consciousness does not make reality unreal. It makes it relational. Reality is not less solid because of consciousness. It is more precise because it responds consistently to orientation. A mirror is not imaginary just because it reflects you. It is accurate. Reality works the same way. Now listen carefully. This is the third point where many people leave, and if they do, they will think this was interesting, but not useful. The most important insight is here, but only if you stay. If you misunderstand this moment, everything else collapses into abstraction. Stay, because this is where the century-old misunderstanding finally loosens its grip. Now listen carefully. Quantum reality was never about particles or waves. That debate was a symptom. It was consciousness trying to understand itself using tools designed for objects. And that will always feel paradoxical, because consciousness cannot observe itself as an object. It can only experience itself as relationship. This is why the question, is the wave function real, never fully resolves. Reality is not a thing. It is an interaction. And interactions are real without being objects. When physics asks, what exists when no one is looking? It assumes existence requires observation, but existence is not the issue, selection is. Reality does not disappear without observation. It becomes unselected, and unselected does not mean unreal. It means unexperienced. Now listen carefully. You are not collapsing reality. You are tuning into it, and tuning is continuous, moment by moment. This is why the present moment matters, not spiritually, structurally. The present is the only point where selection happens, not because the past is gone, but because the present is where coherence is active. This is why regret is heavy. It tries to select from a state that no longer exists. And anxiety is heavy. It tries to select from a state that hasn't formed. Only presence has leverage, not as practice, as orientation. Now listen carefully. At this point, notice something. You are not being told what to do. There are no steps, no rules, no methods. Because methods create performance. Performance creates interference. Interference breaks coherence. This is why the most powerful shifts often happen accidentally. You stop trying, you stop pushing, you stop narrating, and reality breathes. This does not mean inaction. It means congruence. Action from congruence feels obvious. Action from misalignment feels heavy. Your body knows the difference before your mind does. Now listen carefully. This is why awakening is often described as remembering, not learning. You are not acquiring something new. You are releasing a distortion. And what remains feels familiar, quiet, stable. This is where identity softens. You no longer define yourself by struggle, or by story, or by proving. You begin to feel like a participant rather than a victim, not empowered in a dramatic way. Grounded. Now listen carefully. At this point, I want you to pause the video for a moment, and if this resonates, leave a comment with just this phrase: "I recognize this." No explanation, no justification, just recognition. Now continue listening, because recognition is the doorway, not effort. Now listen carefully. Parallel realities are not places you go. They are contexts you allow. Each context has its own logic, its own timing, its own version of you. You don't travel to them. You become compatible with them. Compatibility is coherence. This means you cannot carry everything with you. Some habits, some identities, some expectations, they belong to a different context. Trying to bring them forward creates friction. Now listen carefully. This is why growth feels like loss. Not because you're losing something valuable, but because you're releasing something familiar. Familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. This is where trust replaces control, not blind trust. Structural trust. Trust that reality responds to coherence more accurately than force. Now listen carefully. If this is landing, comment with this phrase: "I stopped forcing." You don't need to know what it means yet. Just notice the orientation. Now continue. There is no final awakening, no arrival point, no permanent state. There is only increasing coherence, refinement, subtlety. This is why the path never ends, and why that's not a problem. A system that ends would be static. Consciousness is not static. It explores itself through experience, and you are one of those explorations, not separate, not special, essential. Now listen carefully. The silent global awakening is not about belief. It is about fatigue. People are tired of pushing, tired of pretending effort equals worth, tired of explanations that ignore lived experience. And that fatigue opens space for coherence. You don't need to convince anyone. Resonance does not persuade, it attracts, quietly. Now listen carefully. If you've stayed until here, it's not because you agree. It's because something in you recognizes the pattern, not intellectually, structurally. And recognition is irreversible. You may forget the words, you may dismiss the ideas, but orientation has already shifted slightly, and reality will respond, gently, over time. Before the video ends, leave one final comment. Just this phrase: "I'm listening differently now, not to me, to reality." And don't wait for a response, because the response is not verbal, it's experiential. Now listen carefully. There is nothing to conclude, nothing to summarize, nothing to close. This is not an ending. It's a recalibration, and recalibration continues after silence, after the video ends, after the words fade. Reality will echo this back to you, not as proof, as pattern. And when it does, you'll know why this never needed an answer. Only attention, only orientation, only coherence. And that recognition continues.